Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Reiki Women Podcast. We are so glad to have you with us on this beautiful late winter day. My name is Michaela with Heartscapes Reiki. With me today, as always, is Bronwen Logan of Reiki with Bronwen and Carrie of the Reiki Healing Society. And we are circling up today around a conversation around language. As is the case in pretty much any community or any field of study or of practice, the community of Reiki has our own language, our own euphemisms, our own terminology, our own technical speak, the jargon, if you will, that comes along with being part of a community that centers around a particular practice. And it's interesting to think about these kinds of statements, euphemisms, jargon. Where did they come from? What do they actually mean? And do we actually mean what we say when we use these common phrases? Oftentimes we'll say a common phrase inside of a community without even really thinking about what it means or if we actually mean what we say. So we thought that it would be interesting to explore that world in general and to focus specifically on a phrase that is commonly shared, that has probably come out of each of our mouths at a certain point, which is the phrase, Reiki is love. So what do we mean when we say Reiki is love? And is this an accurate statement, at least as far as our experience goes? And Carrie, I am just absolutely fascinated to know what you think about this topic.
Oh, thank you. Oh, well, I think I have an absolutely fascinating answer. Um, yeah, definitely have said those words, Reiki is love. And there was like, this is kind of my own process is sometimes, things happen, come into your life, hopefully for a reason. And um, from the path of yoga, they say, does yoga choose you or do you choose yoga? And I've heard a few teachers say that. And according to this yogic philosophy, yoga chooses you. It's not you choose it. And of course, respecting personal choices and everything. The path of Reiki, I think, is similar. We don't necessarily choose it. Reiki chooses us. And so, in the beginning of my Reiki journey, it was just like, amazing, transformational, spiritual experiences and profound healing. And, I kind of sobered up from all that like years later. And then I started really questioning some of the assumptions that I made along the way, and one of those is Reiki is love. Well, I think that that's a beautiful thing, right? It's a beautiful statement and it's a beautiful connecting of two concepts that are universal. Yet for a few years, I've kind of just been sitting with that question: is Reiki love really? Like, and why? Why is that? Why is that connection there? And ultimately, it brought me back to this definition of Reiki provided by Hiroshi Doi in his book, Reiki, a Modern Method for Healing. And I think it's quite lovely. And so I thought I'd share it with you as kind of, a discussion piece, and maybe we can build off of it from here. But he says, when defining Reiki, he says, Reiki is the universal energy, the power that gave birth to the great universe. It created the solar system, brought all of the creatures on the earth, and maintains them in good order. It's also the foundation of the source energy of all manifestation in the universe. It's the fine energy vibration or halo of love radiating from the universe, from the highest consciousness with the purpose to carry out its will. The halo of love is life energy emanating from higher consciousness and spreading out equally in all directions. And to become a channel for Reiki, we have to receive the halo of love by uniting yourself with the consciousness and the rhythm of the universe and purifying yourself to transmit it as it is. The only difference between Reiki and non-Reiki energy is whether or not it has the halo of love, and whether or not it leads everything to life in harmony or it does not. So that's a lot of words to think about, but at the time of filming this, it's very close to Valentine's Day. And I can tell you that love is in the Haddo. Haddo is in the love. And you kind of feel that energy of love in the air, and we feel our, humanity really uniting around love this time of year. And so, to boil that down, I really do come back to that practice of Reiki is am I connecting to something that is actually leading me to more harmony? Is it creating transformational shifts in my healing? Or is it bringing me more and more down this like tunnel vision of a very narrow minded way of thinking and being? And I think love has this capacity to kind of break that apart for us. And I remember recently I was just on my evening walk with my dog, and um, my dog was really insistent that I get outside, right? And I was just like, "What's going on?" And he was just being really pestering about it, and I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And then we get all the way down to our little spot, and it's overlooking the ocean. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I saw whale spouts, and I was just like, "Oh." So grateful for my dog, and he had just had that, I don't know, whatever, it was just this kind of momentum towards nature. And in sitting there and seeing these whale spouts out in the distance, like my heart just opened. It's amazing love, and it is romantic in some sense, but it's also just this love of life and this gratitude for the beauty of life and the interconnection between all beings. And really at the bedrock of that isn't that love, is this amazing connection to whales, dog, nature, each other. And so I found that Reiki has been such an amazing resource for me in the department of love, between my husband and I. um, so much love and growth and sharing and joy in that relationship, and working through stuff as well. Um, and I don't think I don't know. I feel like Reiki has given me so much support in that area of my life, and it's not just romantic love. It's also this profound, deep, um, beyond surface level love. It's a love for humanity and for life. So,
So, Carrie, when you were the quote from Hiroshi Doi, were you saying the hardo of love?
Hado of love, yeah.
A wave of love, right?
Yeah, like a
Like
wave.
yeah, okay, yep. So, and okay, so I was just trying to think about what he was saying, and he was pinpointing it as the sort of the foundation for everything, I guess, is what he was saying. Yep. And in that sense, if we think, yeah, I don't know. Look, I was just wanted to refine that because I wasn't sure. But if I think about this term, it's a term I've used many times, and I know I've written it down, like when I've written articles and things, and but I'm not sure where I've written it down, so I couldn't say what that was when I was coming to that point. And I think you've both sort of said that it's something that comes up, and it's something that we feel, and it feels like it's the right thing to say or think or at that time about the system of Reiki when we're talking about our experience with it. So I was trying to think just before we started this, what does it mean to me? And I could see, well, there are different things. I wrote down a few little bits and pieces. That one is that when we bring ourselves into the moment, and that's one of the things that we are always working with within the system of Reiki, is being present, being here now, being here in that hardo of love, or just being here. And it's, I guess, similar to, it is what you're saying, Carrie, about your experience of seeing the whales. When we're really in the moment and we are experiencing the moment for ourselves, it is an amazing experience. It is something that we often don't have because we're always shifting, moving forward, backwards, thinking of other things. But if we can be in the present moment, it is an amazing thing. And we can only ever be in that moment if we are actually showing ourselves and others love. That's how it feels like to me. It's like we're giving ourselves love. We're giving ourselves this preciousness. And the system of Reiki is about experiencing that. So knowing that and bringing that into our lives every moment. So I can definitely see this correlation between the two, these two different thoughts. You also mentioned, universal, that word. Yes, they're universal, but I guess, so we consider the system of Reiki to be universal. We consider, I guess, love to be universal, but then I'm just going to throw some thoughts out here. Does that mean that hate is also universal? I don't know. What I'm just thinking is that, just because something is in the world doesn't mean that it is Reiki, I guess. Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm getting into a whole bunch of weird stuff here. So anyway, just trying to throw some thoughts out there about, what things are. But I do think that this, when we work with a system of Reiki, so being in the moment, that is an experience of love, even if that moment is not a great moment, if you know what I'm saying, right? It doesn't have to be whale spout, so that must have been beautiful. But, it could be anything. It could just be, if I could totally be present here with you guys now, totally present, that would be also heart opening, that pureness of that moment. And it's incredibly difficult. It's an incredibly difficult place to find ourselves. I think this thing of giving and receiving and sharing, which is also a fundamental aspect of the system of Reiki. So learning about giving, learning about receiving, learning about sharing. So those elements all together, we work with that when we are doing hands-on healing. We work with that when we are in Reiju, when we, it is also a fundamental element of experience. So it's not just about me, it's about others, and that we are all in this together. And that to me is also motivated by love. And I wonder if love is like the engine behind this. Love is what makes us do these things, be here for each other, be here for ourselves to experience life. It's almost like it's the motivator, or something that is chugging along there, that we are feeding with our hard practice to help us to be here in this moment together, sharing, giving, receiving. I don't know where I went there. I apologize to everyone.
I love it. I think this is one of these topics that kind of like opens up this field, and then we're going to range around in it, because I'm having a similar experience of like so many ideas, like how to make a coherent reflection. So I think where I want to start with this is, kind of where I started in the introduction. What do we actually mean by the words that we say? And I want to disclaim by saying that I don't think any of us can have any kind of hard and fast, like actual factual answer to this question, right? Like all of this is subjective. It's what we believe, what we have experienced, how we interpret what we experience, and then what words we put onto that experience. So there's many layers of like filtering a direct experience in just answering this question, right? About very esoteric things, very big things that people, across time and culture have discussed, right? So we're just kind of stepping into this very, very big conversation that does not have a definitive answer. I don't know how you would definitively answer the question, is Reiki the same thing as love? Are they synonymous with each other, right? Is kind of where I'm entering this question. So with that disclaimer, the way that I would approach it is by saying, okay, so what do I understand Reiki to be, and what do I understand love to be? I understand Reiki to be the energy that animates everything, that is life itself, that is present in every human life, every cell of our body, independent of our wholeness, and every other life form, and maybe even beyond life into, all matter, all things in the universe. It's what binds us and animates us. And as such, it includes both everything that is human and everything that is not human, right? It's all things. But we understand it and experience it, of course, through our own human experience and our own human lens. And humans across time and space are notorious for anthropomorphizing everything. In other words, we tend to view non-human life and even inanimate objects and concepts and, energies as sharing human characteristics. There are so many examples of that. We could talk about it all day long, but even like deities that are created to kind of explain and embody, spiritual experiences have this anthropomorphization. Now, some will say, absolutely not. There are actual literal deities. There are literal, conscious, non-human beings, but that somehow have a human form that we're in relationship with. Others would say that there is a consciousness that doesn't have a human form, but it has characteristics of the human mind, right? Maybe greater, more vast, more subtle, but we can understand that consciousness by virtue of our own consciousness. Now, I don't know if any of that is true or not. What any of us can do is report on our own experience. I personally have not had an experience that tells me that either of those things are true. That's just where I'm at. What I have had direct experiences with, primarily through my Reiki practice, but also I would say before I had a formal Reiki practice, experiences that I had with the natural world that were being in touch with Reiki, but I just didn't have that, context at the time. I've had many experiences of feeling that deep, abiding connection with the web of life in some kind of interaction with nature, perhaps similar to the one that you described, Carrie, with the whales and the way that your dog kind of intuited to the whales. And so for me, I would say Reiki as a phenomenon. So again, we're distinguishing a system of practices created by humans to interact with the phenomenon of Reiki. Reiki as a phenomenon, if I was to say, put another word to say Reiki is blank, I would say Reiki is life and Reiki is connection between and among all of that life, including our own. And as humans, when we touch that connection, a natural response in us is the sensation of love. So then we have to say, so what is love, right? If Reiki is life and the interconnection of all life, and many, many things that entails in our experience, then what is love? For me, love is the alchemy of a feeling, a sensation in our body, a sensation in our emotional body and our physical body and our mind, and associated actions and responses that we take in relationship to that which we are feeling these feelings about, which could be another person, it could be an animal, it could be a situation, it could be all of humanity, whatever wherever it is that we're directing that love, or that we're feeling that love, coming to us from. It's this alchemy of a feeling, sensations in the body, and action, behavior. And we perceive that coming to us as well when we are in this feeling of connection. And so love is a very, very natural, again, this is Michaela's filter, right? My beliefs, right? Not definitive hard facts answer. But for me, love is the absolutely natural and appropriate human response to experiencing our interconnection with all of life. And it's a natural jump for us to say, I'm experiencing life loving me back. I'm experiencing animals loving me back. I'm experiencing trees loving me back. I'm experiencing deities loving me, consciousness loving me, God loving me, angels loving me, whatever word we want to put on the unseen web of life, I am loving in response to this feeling of connection. And therefore, in my mind, I am being loved back by this web of life. Maybe that could absolutely be the case, right? My experience, my experience tells me that love is a human experience, not a universal experience. That Reiki is a universal phenomenon. Love is a human response to touching that phenomenon within us and around us. That we experience this love radiating from us and radiating to us through the web of life. But could I say that the tree in my backyard loves me?
Yes.
I could say that, but that's not been my experience. Now, this might feel very sad, right? Somebody might be like, wow, that's so sad. You've never had the experience of divine love or like of nature loving you back. I don't experience it as sad. What I experience is that I have had many moments of feeling that web of life vibrating and feeling myself inside of it. And my response to that is a deep feeling of love. I don't need to believe that love is coming back towards me, because my belief is that love is a human experience. But these are just words, right? Someone else could say, okay, but if you say that Reiki is the web of life and its connection, that's love. Cool. If that's what that means to you, great. Like that's cool. Like that's a perfectly fine use of words. But in my lexicon, my definition, what does this word mean? The word love describes a human experience, and a very appropriate response to phenomena that are bigger than humanity, that are more than what we actually experience. And it's lovely to feel a radiation of love going back and forth in both directions. Like, I don't want to discount that for anybody. I'm just kind of sharing what my definitions are, and that for me personally, it's just not how I experience it. So for me, Reiki is life and interconnection between all life, and love is a very, very powerful human response to that connection. But I could be wrong. Probably am.
My dog was barking and I was having a moment there, but maybe he was leading me to the whales or something like that. I mean, I am watching, Michaela. I think it's wonderful. It's like you've thought so much about that. And I think it is really important to test our assumptions. And I think love, no matter how you slice it, however you define it, it takes this leap of faith, to be with love, to live it as if it was real. Right. And some of us live without ever making that kind of intellectual inquiry. And so I think it's so important to do that. And what was I going to say about that? I lost my train of thought here. So many thoughts. They're all like filtering in together. But, I've also been there, really like questioning love and also, the biology of love too. So, so much about human connection is oxytocin, and having breastfed 2 children, I can tell you that drug is real, because, oh my gosh, I was like in love. And then, when we're like connecting to our partner, like our soulmate, and probably all had these like clandestine romances where it's just been like, so all encompassing and so incredible. And yet probably, at some part of that is hormones and, drugs happening in our brain, and, all things that probably have evolved with us as life has evolved, because, that connection is real, and there's an emotion behind it. There's And there's a physiology behind it too. And I'm sure that goes into our evolutionary biology and all of that. And I even feel more in touch with hormones as I enter my 40s, and I feel like my hormones have been out of control. And so I'm respecting more and more, the hormonal response to life and our well-being, and those different layers of it. But I think also, back to the space piece, it's like trusting, and whether or not love is like this palpable, real thing that animates the universe, and that when we're connecting with Reiki, we're feeling and connecting with divine love. I think, no matter how you slice it, there's this logical leap that we have to take to live that, to really feel like that's our answer for us. But I got to tell you, I've just committed to living that way, because it makes life softer, and it makes life be more meaningful. And if I feel like I love the universe, and the universe loves me back, I feel more joy in my day-to-day living. And I think that really at the essence of what's happening when people connect to Reiki, and really that click or that light bulb goes off for them, and they start making powerful and beautiful changes in their life, a lot of that comes down to feeling loved. It really does. It really comes back to not just like I love myself, but is like feeling loved by everything that is, by the universe, that. And so, again, I can't prove that with science or anything like that, but it just, to me, makes my life more meaningful. And I think we feel that also in life's most challenging transitions, when people are dying and leaving their body in this earth, that just this essence of love that's in that moment, not chemicals. It is this heart of connection and care we have for each other. And we feel that poignancy of like the moment, being in the moment with people as they're journeying onward, that we can't hold on to them. I think that points us in the direction of, either complete despair and misery because we don't know, or it leads us into a direction of trust and acceptance, and knowing that we don't always have all the answers. But we can, despite not having all the answers, we can still trust. We can still trust that inner knowing of our heart and our mind, and the incredible mosaic that life is. That I have like billions of cells in my body, and they're all working together to create this capacity for me to live and breathe and to do all the things that I get to do in my life. Like, I just choose to believe somewhere in there is love. And whether or not, I don't know, I can't really define how much of it is love, how much of it is chemicals, how much is whatever, but I choose, I make that conscious choice because it makes me feel better.
And that's important. So yeah, for me, I think, yes, it's about definitions. I think we're probably talking about different types of love here. And I understand exactly what you're saying, Michaela. For me, I think that when I'm talking about Reiki is love, I am talking about that open-heartedness. And I don't think the open-heartedness is necessarily about expecting the world to love me. I think that that open-heartedness is about me being in the world and being a part of that actually, if you go back to what Doi was saying, that wave of Reiki, just being in that wave of Reiki and being in that natural flow of everything. That's where I see this synonymousness. So if I try to describe what Reiki is to someone in a class, for example, I'll often talk about a light, and that, we are this light. And the thing about light is that it shines on everything. It is a part of everything, can be a part of everything. And yet this light of us has stuff over it. And, all those things that we throw over this light are the things that stop us from being totally open-hearted. And they're the things, that's why we practice the system of Reiki, to help us to remove these things and to be in this open-hearted space. And in that sense, that's where I see this comparison between being love and being Reiki. I think there's lots of ways we could take love. And, I brought up hate before. If we were to look at that as dualistic elements, the world is full of dualistic elements, but that's seeing love in a different way as well. Yep. So it's almost like if we were to take a coin and we were to say, put those two together, then you have something, you have a choice in it, in reality. And that's also what Carrie's talking about, the choice to be love. Yeah. These are the choices we make. What side of the coin am I going to live on? And, we flip the coin occasionally, but, you have something to say, Michaela? Yeah.
Well, I just think that, that what both of you are saying is so useful around the ways that we define these things, right? And that, what's kind of juicy about a conversation like this is we get to kind of lay our definitions alongside each other, right? And to see how different the definitions of a simple word like love might be, right? And how we understand it. And I think that, we need to understand, our place in the world and our spiritual practice and our direct experiences with that in the way that is most generative and life-giving for ourselves, right? And so even, when you proposed this topic, Carrie, I was like, should I answer this question? Because my definition is going to feel like a bummer to some people, right? And that's why I put lots of disclaimers of like, this is just how I understand it. And I am very at peace with this definition. It feels really good to me. And that's simply because of the way that I'm understanding things. And I think that I have a sensitivity, to the ways in which humanity tends to project our form and our thoughts and our feelings and our ways of being in the world onto non-human things in a way that causes a lot of problems. And so I'm very sensitive to that. So I tend to be a little bit more like interrogative of like, if I'm talking about a human emotion and I'm ascribing that human emotion to non-human things, does that serve me or does it not serve me? Is it useful to do that or is it not? Is that accurate or is it not? And so for me, it's not useful to do that. For me, what's useful is to recognize my responses and our collective responses to mysterious, amazing things that we experience, and to just kind of hold that, like, I'm not going to assume that this human experience exists outside of humanity. What I do assume, because I can observe it in the world and I can observe it in my experience, is this sense of interconnection of life. And that feeling of being so connected and so resourced and so much bigger than my one little human self fills me with a feeling of love, right? And that open-heartedness that you're experiencing. And it makes me feel not alone, and all of the things that love gives to us. And yes, in response to other humans, there's that reciprocation. And so, that's just how I hold it. And, I think it's a perfectly valid and useful word to use to describe what we might experience when we're having, these kinds of moments, and to feel like love is something that exists outside of humanity, I think is a perfectly useful thing to do. It's just not where I land. And I don't need it to. Like, for my experience, I don't need it to be that way. I don't feel deprived because I have this perspective. But I don't want to deprive anybody else by sharing that perspective. So I'm like, I'm going to put disclaimers on my comments, because otherwise I have to just opt out of this conversation.
I just think it's a different thing, actually, what you're talking about. And I'm not talking about hormones or, you know, and I know those feelings. Those feelings are something else, right? You know, I don't think that is the same as, you know, I was just saying like what you would teach to someone trying to explain what Reiki is, something like letting go, for example, is, you know, that is profound. And if we can let go, then we are in a space of love, I think, for me. Yeah, but it's just a word. And it's a word I guess we use maybe because we want, we're trying to explain something using language. And, you know, that was the beginning of this conversation, language, right? We're trying to use language to explain something, but it may not be the right word. Yeah. But it's our attempt to connect with others and to explain to others what it is and why they might be interested in doing something like this and what that experience might feel like.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you know, language is always going to be incomplete when we're trying to describe an experience. And, you know, to say Reiki is letting go and that is the feeling of love, I think that's a very serviceable way to explain it to somebody else. And, you know, and just, it just kind of does different things in my mind that like Reiki, like what we're trying to do is describe our experience of the phenomenon, but our experience of it is not the thing itself. Is I think where I land on that. And does that matter when we're just kind of trying to talk about it? Maybe not, right? But if we're gonna like center a conversation on, is it true that Reiki and love are the same thing? Then it can take us to some interesting places, I think.
And I think too, it's so, you know, again, we're talking about something that really you can't describe it. You can't put it into a box. You can't, you know, no one has the complete definition. And what I hear you saying too, Michaela, is that you don't have to have a belief in a higher power or God or anything to feel Reiki. And I think that's really a fundamental concept of Reiki too. And, you know, there's lots of us in the Reiki world who fill in our own personal religious beliefs and filter our practice of Reiki or experience of Reiki through that lens.
Yeah.
And it's just such an important, good reminder that, first of all, we don't need that lens in order to look at Reiki directly. And we don't need, you know, fluffy words that give us these beautiful feelings to describe something that is probably even more profound than love, you know, is the essence of everything. And to remind ourselves that Reiki is like speaking to something that is so vast, it's so big. And Reiki itself is one of those words that we can't define it, you know, because it's so much bigger than our human consciousness and human mind. And in the importance of, you know, testing our assumptions and, you know, and doing in that process, discovering our truth, you know, really getting to the nuts and bolts. And why I thought it was so lovely to get that quote from Hiroshi Doi is that somebody logically put those two things together and could help us understand, well, why is Reiki love? Why is that not just an assumption? And, you know, I've also had healing experiences where I can feel like I was touched by love and love happening in this unseen place where, you know, just like Reiki, I can't touch it. I can't feel it, except for, you know, a 5 o'clock glass of wine or something like that. That's also love. But like, you know, like
Cheers.
I can feel it in my heart, you know, and it moves our heart. Like we feel that heartbeat. And you know, times where I've just, you know, the same, like you were talking about, Bronwen, these layers over us. And I've personally been having this conflict lately that's just like really kind of overwhelmed my brain. And I'm just feeling myself like in this wired fight or flight conflict kind of mentality. And at the same time, like helping my kids with all their Valentines. There's so much of me that wants to be in this like loving place, but at the same time I'm also like sending like bad energy bad thoughts, or I'm dealing with all these bad thoughts in my brain about somebody who I feel has harmed me, right? And I feel wronged in some way too. And so it's this challenge of holding both those really totally polarizing emotions. And it's true that we have to like move beyond that. Like we have to get in deeper in order to really experience that vibe of love, or to be in the energy of Reiki. And
Carrie,
it's not easy.
yeah, we didn't bring up, and I sort of didn't want to, but just at this point, but compassion, because often people think of compassion as love, and not necessarily the same thing either, right? Possibly. Once again, it feels like it's the motor behind something. I don't know. Anyway, but what you're talking about, that brings us back to that whole thing of wrathful compassion, because things aren't always perfect. We can be joyful about things, but the Dalai Lama said, if you've got a shitty neighbor, don't let them walk over you, right? Yeah, because I have a shitty neighbor. But yeah, no, but you know what I mean? It's a bit like when I read that, I was thinking, because trying to do exactly what you're talking about, being loving, kind. How do I bring that into it? But you have to come at a different angle. Yeah. And it doesn't, I'm just saying that, compassion and love, this idea that it's this, or maybe love is this perfect space, this open-heartedness. But sometimes to move into that space, we have to work in a different way or come at it from a different angle. Too much pressure, Carrie, too much pressure.
I know a lot, and I love that, because I've been really feeling like, in order to really move beyond this, is to me to speak my truth and be kind of a little bit nasty about the wrong that I feel I experienced in this situation. And and it speaks to also the duality of just loving in relationships, and that we haven't even talked about that really, but sending you all love in your relationships and this nurturing, but that this is also the challenge of it, is to love someone deeply. Is sometimes my husband really pisses me off, and don't make that assured. But yet at the same time, our love is built on coming back together and like recognizing the ways in which we haven't met each other's expectations, the ways in which our balance between each other hasn't been met, and yet like the love is to constantly come back and recommit to each other, because we really do love each other. And that love is kind of reaching across the divide sometimes that can happen so sometimes the antithesis of love is just disconnection, constantly seeking disconnection because we're afraid of the intimacy. Or maybe there's other reasons too, but I know we're like almost on time.
Well, and the system of Reiki is the perfect vehicle to be in the paradox of all of what you're saying, right? The wrathful compassion of being able to set boundaries in our lives and to be able to speak our truth, and to do that from a place that's open-hearted rather than constricted, to reach across difference with our hearts and with that feeling of love. And whether or not that love is strictly between and among humans as a human experience, or whether it transcends us and is actually part and parcel of the fabric of the universe itself, which is a fantastic idea. Either way, the system of Reiki is a vehicle for helping us to touch that and to bring it into our lives on a daily basis more and more consistently. And so let there be more love in your lives, in our lives, in the world generally, whatever the date on the calendar tells us that it might be. And so I've really appreciated this conversation. I love these kind of philosophical discussions where we can have different perspectives and kind of, again, lay them on the table and just take a look at them and see the similarities and the contrasts. I hope we get to have many more of them in the future. And for those of you listening at home, let us know what you think. Is Reiki love? Are they synonymous? Are they related? What do you see as the relationship? And more importantly, what has been your experience with the relationship between Reiki and love? We'd love to hear all about it down in the comments. And if you'd love to hear more from us on this here YouTube's, on the podcasting platform of your choice, please do subscribe to this channel. Give us a rating on Spotify, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Let the algorithms know that you appreciate what we have going on here so that you can hear more of it from us. And I guess the only thing left to say is that we love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.